How good to have you all. It's such a pleasure to be here. And I'm just going to dive straight in. If we look at the topic for today is on, it's focused on branding. It's a continuation of the last session that we had. And the focus this time around is creating a brand guide. We have said a lot during the last session about branding and why branding is important and at what point you should start thinking about branding your organization. We also talked about the different types of branding that you can possibly have, etc. We'll be doing a bit of overview in the next couple of slides. Can you move to the next slide, please? And then the next one. Okay, so today I'll be doing, my presentation flow is pretty simple. Again, I typically like it to be interactive. So use the chat, let the chat keep buzzing. If you've got questions, comments, ideas, contributions to this session, just put that in the chat. But before we go on today, for looking at the presentation flow, I know that I did give a task. I gave a task for us to work on. Did we get a chance to work on our task? Did anybody take some time to work on the task? The task basically was a lot of, I wanted you to all do some self-reflection before you come into this session today, because the self-reflection is very important. And that way you're able to then reflect over your business, over your organization. And when we start talking about your brand guide and the various components of your brand guide, you can apply them appropriately. Versus if you didn't take time to reflect. Akim, yes, I see the yes. Thank you, Akim. So feel free to share some of your thoughts in the chat. If I'd love to have somebody as a case study today, so I can use one person. Feel free if you'd like to volunteer. We can sort of take your self-reflection and then delve deeper into how to apply the concept of branding into all of the ideas you have in your mind. So today we'll be going over like the part one, an overview of part one. We'll be talking about the brand guide and how you can actually do that. We'll be talking about the contents of your brand guide. I will be sharing with you some resources which will be made available through your coordinator, and then as usual, we'll have a question and answer session. So if you've got questions, you can start putting them in the chat. And then, when we get to the end, you can also feel free to ask a question at that time. Next slide, please. Okay, so let's talk about, just an overview. For those of us, I assume that some people here today didn't join the last one, just so that you don't feel totally lost and you can catch up on where we are. We talked about brand identity, and we defined, next slide please, we defined brand identity. First, we defined branding, what a brand is, and then what branding is. We talked about the fact that it's the art and the science of influencing perception. And it's not just influencing any perception, but perception about your products, perception about your service, perception about your organization. It could even be perception about yourself as an individual and how you overall put yourself together, the kind of content you put out there can go a long way in painting the impression that people have of you and what you stand for. All right, let's look at the next slide. So we talked about things that what branding is about, and over again, one of the things that showed up in our conversation the last time is that you need to be consistent. Okay, it's not enough to just show up once and you're just more like a flash in the pan. You show up once and then you're not there anymore, or you talk about your story once and then you don't talk about it anymore. What keeps things in the minds of people is the consistency that comes with it. Over and over again, the same message is projected, the same message is shared, whether it's through social media or through beneficiaries that you work with, or whatever platform it is you choose, but the same message is shared again and again. We also talked about public perception as the overall crux behind branding and why it is important. All right, so I'm going to ask you now. I know I asked this question at the time, but I want to see if you all remember. So I said, at what point can you define your brand? At what point should you start having that conversation? We can go to the next slide, please. At what point should you start to define your brand as an organization or as a business? Next slide, please. Okay. Does somebody want to tell me? Oh, 4 days says ASAP. All right, Teresa, ASAP. Yes, as soon as possible. It's okay if you've already started something, that's fine. As a matter of fact, somebody who has started something is way better than someone who hasn't even done anything at all, but is only thinking about the idea in their minds. So the moment you've started to put some thoughts together, it's great. You can always pause and reflect and refine what the brand is and what you stand for. But if you haven't started at all, it's time to start now. Even while you're still saying, "Oh, I want to start a nonprofit organization. I want to start a community-based organization." You have to start to put those ideas and thoughts together there. You're welcome, Lavetta. Good to have you. I can see that in the chat. So let's talk about your brand identity. The last time we said a lot about, it was a lot about other people's brand identities and the things we had noticed in other people's identities, the things that have continued to stand out for us in other people's brand identities. But now let's talk about you. All right, let's talk about your own brand identity. Okay, so for the purpose of this session, I would need you to take one brand that you would like to focus on. The last time we said some people may choose to focus on their personal brands. Some may, talking about different types of branding. It could be a geographic brand. It could be anything. But for the purpose of this session, let's say that your focus is on your business and your organization. The principles are similar. When you learn this, you can also take these principles and apply them to other areas of your life that you have a brand that you're trying to build on. So let's look at our case study. Let me look in the chat. Do I have anybody who has shared? Okay, so I see Akim shared something. So I see Akim, okay. I left school, messed up my life quite a lot because I didn't have anything to do. When the results were announced, I became more hopeless because the results weren't quite what I expected. My circumstance told me that there was nothing else left for me to do even more due to absence of school fees and opportunities to become who I always wanted to be. Okay, you always wanted to be a computer engineer. And the mission of the brand is that I will pitch, hope someone, hope someone doesn't steal it, but I will pitch. You want to provide you want to provide digital computer literacy to secondary school leavers who have just left school and have nothing to do. Okay, so Akim, if you can put in the chat, so you want to, so if I get you correctly, you haven't started your organization yet. Is that correct? You're just thinking of something you're about to start. Feel free to put in the chat. Let me see that. Yes, you have not started it. Okay, you have not started it at all. How far gone are you though? Have you, okay, yeah, let me see, did you? Okay, you started pretty soon. Okay. All right, so okay. Okay, so unfortunately, most schools in your community don't offer computer lessons. Okay, so this is pretty much the rationale behind why you want to start. You want to start a computer school for people who who are done with school and really don't have anything to do. Okay, so when you say people who are done with school, is this just everybody who is done with school, whether male or female? Okay, I can again just refer. Okay, yes. All right, awesome. Okay. Okay, so let's continue as we move along. We'll look into, so talking about your brand identity. Can we go to the next slide, please? So this is where the work starts to get a little practical, and I'd like everybody else to please take note. I believe that we have done our task. We've taken time to do the self-reflection. We've thought about our businesses and what we currently do, and then we can start. So while we're looking at Akim as a case study in this class, apply same to your own brand, okay? And if you have questions, feel free to ask. So components of your brand identity. I'm going to delve into this in detail, but we're just going to run through this real quick. So for you to say you have a brand identity, you've done the self-reflection, which is really important. That's where the background work is. But then you want to start to think about, first thing, the name of your business. The name of your business is so important. As a matter of fact, you can choose a name that reflects the kind of service that you provide or the kind of things that you intend to so the kind of problems you intend to solve or something like that. And so your branding starts right from your name. You want to think about your colors, okay, and how your colors will reflect what your organization stands for. So again, we're using Akim as a case study, and we'll be delving deeper as we move along. So you're thinking about the colors, you're thinking about the logo that you're going to create to reflect the organization and the vision, the mission, the backstory, the why behind why you've chosen to set up this organization, or why you have chosen to work on this particular project. Other things that you want to consider as well is the font, the way your text look. Okay, when you send out official letterheads, for example, official letters on your letterhead paper, or official documents, the kind of font, the kind of typography you choose should be reflective of what your organization stands for, and what the kind of image you want people to have when they come in contact with your business or your organization. Another thing you want to look at is your tagline, okay? To look for a word that, and it doesn't have to be something long and complicated, but something very short, that when people see that the name of your business and they read your tagline, in a nutshell, it gives them an idea of what your business, your organization, what your brand stands for. Another thing you want to look at is your images, the type of pictures that you use, the type of videos that you use, say on social media, for example, the type of illustrations that you use for your business, and overall, just trying to ensure that you have consistency in the message that you're passing across to your target audience. The choice of language is also very important, okay? As well as your voice or personality. We're going to delve deeper into this as we move along, so just follow me, okay? And then you'll be looking at then developing a brand guide. The brand guide will talk in detail about how that works, why you need to create that, and how you can do that. And lastly, I'll just touch very briefly on your website and social media. As a matter of fact, it is so important these days. If you don't exist online, if people can, people are looking for your organization and they Google you, like we said last time, where, they just set you up online and they cannot find your organization, it's more or less like you don't exist. And so it's important that while you have this fantastic vision, fantastic idea, you've gotten your naming correctly, you've gotten your colors, you've done all these nice things, you've worked on a complimentary card, all of the, you have your social media, etc. You also want to work towards having a website. Okay. Okay. And I mentioned social media already. All right. So the next slide, please. So let's talk about your brand guide and then the visual elements. I just mentioned a couple of those elements there, but this is where we get into the work, okay? So what are the visual elements? Next slide, please. Your brand guide. Again, next slide. Does somebody want to help me? What do you think your brand guide is? Oh, before you go there, can you go back, please? Can you go back? Can you cover that? Hoping that not too many people have seen what's there. But can you tell me in the chat, what is a brand guide? What do you think a brand guide is? Okay, feel free to use the chat, okay, and tell me. Hoping you haven't done some spying into my slides. But tell me, what do you think your brand guide is? Okay, let me check the chat and see any thoughts. Feel free, no answer is right or wrong. Like, just feel free to share what you think, and we're here to learn and just continue to improve on what we know. Okay. So what do you think a brand guide is? We've talked about branding. We've talked about the the importance of branding, and it talks, branding is about the perception, the impression you leave in the minds of people about your business. But what do you think a brand guide is? Again, feel free to share in the chat. Okay, I don't see anything coming just yet, but that's fine. When you think of something, feel free to use the chat. Oh, I see something. Okay, so a brand guide Christine says a brand guide is an outline of how you intend to put yourself out there. Okay, how you intend to be seen, how you intend to be known, and how you gain trust from customers. Beautiful. Yes, it's an outline. It's something. Okay, Abdul Karim. I see it's a brand book record. A brand book record, a brand book that records all livestock to brands registered with an organization. I'm not sure I fully understood what you meant there. But a book, yeah, it can be a book, a document of some sort. Yes, Abdul Karim. A book, a document of some sort. Oh, Fode, wow, that's some comprehensive stuff in there. Thank you, Fode, for sharing that. That's powerful. I like that. So a lot of self-reflection starting to go on there. Okay, next slide, please. All right, so you're right. I mean, you've shared a few things, Abdul Karim and Christine. You know, your brand guide is a document that shows that basically talks about how your business or your organization should be represented to the world. Okay, I'm seeing my chats now. It's a document containing details. Yes, you've seen my slides already. Okay, just kidding. All right, but yes, it's a document that that talks about how your organization or your business should be represented to the world. All right, your brand guide provides information about your brand story, about what you stand for, all right, about what you stand for, your history, your mission, your values. As part of the resources, I'll share with the coordinator an example of a brand guide so that you sort of see that. So when you're creating yours, you can try to mirror something similar. All right, so your brand guide highlights things around your sizing, your fonts, your text, okay? The language that you use to communicate to your audiences, your photo choices, all right? Why do you use certain type of pictures and why don't you use some other kind of pictures? All right, your brand guide also serves as a guide to all your team members. You know, we talked about consistency in branding, and for you to be consistent in branding, a brand guide helps you achieve that. So even when you are not there, okay, even when you're not there, the assumption I'm making is you have a team of people that you're working together, whether you're managing a community-based organization or a non-governmental organization or a microfinance organization like Fode. You have a team that you're working with, and you want to ensure that even when you're not there, when you're not the one managing your social media, if you have somebody else managing social media, somebody else developing documents on your behalf, the message is the same. All right, message is the same. And that's where your brand guide comes in. So anyone can pick that up and ensure consistency in how your business, how your organization is being projected to the world. Next slide, please. Okay, so we're now going to go into your business name. Okay, we're now taking it one after the other. Okay, one after the other. I think it was Akim. Akim. So we're taking Akim as our case study today. Akim, your business is supposed to meet a need. You haven't started the business yet, but you're hoping to start that business to meet a need. Okay. Akim, I see. Oh no, okay, that's Abdul Karim. Akim. Okay. So your business would be addressed at people who have left secondary school and who don't have anything they are doing. So it's a digital literacy center, a digital computer literacy center to secondary school leavers. All right, so now let's talk about different types of naming. And everybody, let's workshop this, okay? If you have ideas on it, on potential names, let's talk about how we can name a business or an organization, and let's all workshop this together. Let's use the chat. So when we go over this, let's start to help Akim think of potential names for his business, which is targeted at secondary school leavers and teaching them digital literacy skills. So the first thing, talking about different types of names, okay? The first type of name could be a traditional name, all right? So traditional business names, typically they describe the product or the service that is being offered. Traditional business names are functional and usually they leave room, they as much as possible, there's no room for confusion. All right. So when you see an organization like Guarantee Trust Bank, you don't need to ask too many questions. You sort of, even if you've never heard of them before, you've never seen their office before, you've never seen anything that has to do with them before. But then it gives you this sense that, okay, Guarantee Trust Bank, okay, first of all, they're a bank, okay, and then they are guaranteeing some level of trust. So if I put my money in this bank, then they would help me trust, or I'm able to trust them. There's a guarantee that I have knowing that my money is safe. All right. So that is an example of a traditional business name, just taking a name and trying to explain what your service provides in a simple way, and people can just take that and run with it. And they even made an acronym with that, GTB. So we call them GTB. All right. But it's them highlighting what the business stands for. Okay. The good thing about choosing a traditional business name when you're trying to create a name for your organization is that straight to the point, people already understand what your core purpose is right from the name of your business. There's no ambiguity. They don't have any doubts about it. Look at DSTV as a second example. Okay, the full name of DSTV is Digital Satellite TV or Television. Okay, so does anybody have any doubts about what DSTV does? Just from their name, does it look confusing? Use the chat. Tell me when you hear that the business is called Digital Satellite Television. Does that confuse you? Okay, Abdul Karim says Guarantee Trust Bank is a very friendly bank, right? But even from their name, it gives you the impression that we're trustworthy, we're friendly, we're easy to work with, and we will guarantee that your money will not get missing in quotes. Okay. All right. So digital satellite television is pretty straightforward. There's no confusion there. The second way we could possibly name our business, again, let's keep this in mind. We're trying to help Akim to find a name for his business. All right. So number 2 is invented name. So sometimes you can invent a name. It doesn't exist. You're trying to create a name for something. And that can be when sometimes you can't think of a perfect word that describes your business. Okay. And some people just make up a word, even if the word never existed before. All right. Some would take different pieces of their names. I've seen people who would take like the husband's name, then the wife's name, then the first child's name, or second child's name, and sort of mash it all up together and form something. Some just use their direct name. So for example, Dangote. So Dangote is his name, that's his surname, his last name. But then the organization does so many things. They produce cement, they produce food items, spaghetti, different things that the Dangote organization, the Dangote group of companies does. So they just, okay, let's use Dangote rather than trying to find a perfect word, because we do so many things and we can't seem to find a perfect word to describe all the things that we do. All right. So another is Jumia. What does Jumia mean? How many of us know Jumia? Let me see in the chat. Do you know Jumia? Have you ever bought anything on Jumia before? Anybody knows Jumia in the room? Let me see in the chat if you can tell me if you know Jumia, if you've used Jumia, you've ever engaged with that business before. All right. Okay, so just use the chat there and let me know. Coca-Cola, right? The organization. Oh, Anthony, thank you for that. You know Jumia. You probably use Jumia. Okay, but what does it mean, right? Not exactly. We're not even sure what Jumia means. Okay, so it's possibly someone mashed up something, created something. Okay, invented a name. Sometimes people can play around with a word, misspell a word, try to throw things around a bit, but just invent something for their business. Another name is, another could be compound names. Okay, so with compound names, you can take 2 words and fuse 2 words together, and that helps you to create a name that uniquely describes what your business does. So let's look at LinkedIn, for example. Now, LinkedIn I mean, I believe everybody here is on LinkedIn. If you're not on LinkedIn, you should be on LinkedIn, okay? But LinkedIn, for example, tries to just use a word that describes the service that they provide. So LinkedIn is a platform that links whoever uses it with the professional network. So when you use LinkedIn, we help you link to your professional network, right? So it's just trying to think of the concept behind this and then mashing things up together. Look at ShopRite, for example. I know there's ShopRite in Nigeria. I wonder if they're in a couple of other African countries as well. I think they're in South Africa and then probably some other countries too. So you could have, just taking a name and trying to sort of mash up and describe what your organization does. Again, let's use the chat. We're trying to help Akim find a business name. So if you're already starting to think of potential names for Akim's business, please feel free to use the chat. Akim's business is supposed to be a business to support out of school students or people who have left school and currently don't have anything to do, and providing them with digital literacy skills. The last can be multi-word name, where you could take two strong words. It could be names of the founders, okay? Like Stanbic IBTC Bank, for example. There's the Stanbic company, there's the Stanbic group of companies, there's Stanbic, and then there's IBTC. So it was sort of like a combination of Stanbic and IBTC that became Stanbic IBTC. And there are other organizations that do similar things. Just taking two words, could be names of the founders, could be names of something that resonates with the business, but then basically just taking that and putting that together to form a name. So are there any ideas, any names coming in? Akim, any names coming to your mind already based on this conversation we've had right now, based on this slide? Or anybody else having any ideas? Okay, Akim says I have one in mind. All right, Akim, give it away. If you feel free. Karonga computer literacy. Okay, so what does Karonga mean? Is that an invented name, or is that a name in your language, or what does that mean? Karonga is the place. Great. Okay, that's interesting. So Karonga, I believe, so it's a community where you stay, okay? So maybe Karonga Computer Literacy. So let's say Karonga Computer Literacy Center. What about that? Akim, does that sound good? Okay, Fode says EduTech company. Okay, see, Akim, you have a couple of options here. You can start to think. Okay, so let's say, okay, nice. Okay, so there's Karonga Computer Literacy, let's say Computer Literacy Center. Yes, keep sending them, absolutely. This EduTech company. All right, so if you have more ideas, feel free to use the chat and let them start coming in. So let's say for the purpose of this session, okay, Akim, you have time to fine tune what the name would eventually be. Let's say for the purpose of this session, let's say the name of your business is Karonga Computer Literacy Center, just for this session, okay? All right, let's go to the next slide, please. Oh, I just spoke about the next slide. Okay, can we move to the next slide, please? All right, so let's talk about our colors. Okay, let's talk about our brand colors and how they reflect the business that we are trying to set up. Next slide, please. Okay, if you see that slide, you would see the different things here. Now, there's something called color psychology. And basically, color psychologists say that different colors stir up different emotions in people when they see them. And so, and that also explains why you see certain businesses use certain colors and not some other colors. Basically, depending on what the business stands for, what the business is trying to project to the public. So Karonga Computer Literacy Center, the backstory, Akim, is that you had an experience, an experience that has now become the reason why you're trying to set up this organization, this company, so that students who leave school don't have to be hanging around and they don't have anything to do. They can learn computer skills. Okay, so let's look at the different colors. I'll talk through the different color psychology and let's see what potential colors we can use for Karonga Computer Literacy Center. All right, so Red, according to color psychologists, red typically reflects excitement. It reflects strength. It reflects love, energy. Okay, so when you see certain brands use like a brand like Coca-Cola, for example, they try to tell you, they use things like, oh, open happiness. They try to give you this impression that when you're tired, you're exhausted, you're thirsty, take a bottle of Coke and it's like magic happens to you. Okay, so there's excitement. There's something exciting about the color red. And so a brand like Coke or several other brands that use the color red are trying to reflect that. So when you see their logo, when you see their products, something exciting, starts to stir up in your mind. Okay, there's some energy. It's not dull. Okay, there's some energy and excitement that comes there. The color orange, orange reflects confidence, reflects success, reflects bravery, sociability. Okay, and let's look at GT Bank, for example. We just talked about Guarantee Trust Bank. Guarantee Trust Bank uses the color orange. Okay, and there's something about the bank. If you see a typical Guarantee Trust Bank building, there's something about the architecture of how the buildings look. There's something about they try to tell you, okay, you can trust us, right? We'll look at the color blue and see that a lot of other banks, for example, use the color blue, but GT Bank wanted to be different. So they chose a color that shows that we're sociable, we're a fun organization, we're young people, we're friendly, we're dynamic, we would help you succeed, that sort of thing. Okay, look at yellow, for example. When brands use yellow, they're talking about creativity, happiness, warmth. And if you go on and on, you look at organizations that want to talk about green, they're talking about sustainability, talking about agriculture, okay? You find that they often use green, okay? So green, in terms of how it makes you feel and what it reflects nature, reflects freshness, healing, okay, quality. And organizations that have these as the keywords in what they stand for typically tend to use the color green. Let's look at blue. Okay, blue typifies trust, peace, loyalty, competence. Okay, if you notice health workers, for example, how many of you have noticed health workers, doctors, you find their colors are either white or, you find surgeons or, you find that their clothes, it could be like blue or light blue or white. You also have banks. A lot of banks use the color blue to sort of help you get that sense of trust and confidence, competence, and the fact that they are loyal to you. Okay, pink, people use pink for products that reflect women, that reflect ladies, that reflect girls. So pink, one of the things it does, one of the emotions you feel when you use the color pink or when you see the color pink is compassion, sincerity, sophistication, sweetness. Okay, there's just something sweet and sophisticated about pink, and you find lots of people using pink to reflect, for products that are female related. Purple reflects royalty, luxury, spirituality, ambition. Okay, so you see a lot of so yeah, in royal circles. So purple is a color that is used. It could reflect luxury for organizations that typify luxury. Purple is one color to explore. And brown, dependable, rugged, trustworthy. Black, dramatic, security. Sometimes black can be mystical, right? So if there's a business that does something around that line, maybe black. Okay, white's clean, innocence, simplicity. A doctor wants you to feel that sense of innocence, cleanliness. You go to the hospital and it's all white. Okay, the floor, they try to keep everywhere clean, gives you this sense of this place is nice, I want to be here. It's simple, it's clean. Even if the place is not exactly clean, there might be microorganisms somewhere, but just seeing white gives you that illusion and feeling of cleanliness and innocence there. Okay, so let's go back to Akim's business. Okay, have we found a color there? Oh, Lovetta says I have two colors in there, green and pink. Nice. Okay. Fode says our brand colors comprise gold, green, and white. Okay. Okay, yeah, thank you for that. Gold is defined, it's associated with success, achievements, royalty, fortune. You're right for the yes. So have you found a color for Akim's business? Have you found any colors for Akim's business? We can use the chat and let me see. Any color ideas for Karonga Computer Literacy Center? Okay, Wells Mountains. Yes, brown is for Wells Mountains. Nice. Any color ideas? Okay, someone says orange and black for Akim's business. Akim, are you taking notes? Okay, Larry. Okay, orange and black. Okay, Akim. Oh, yes, you are. Right. Eric says orange. Okay. Again, looking at Akim's target audience. So he's looking at young people. So do we think orange will appeal to young people, whether they're male or female? Again, use the chat if you think so. Okay, do you think orange will appeal to young people, or will it appeal to a certain gender than others? Napiok says mine pink and white for your business. Okay, nice. Christine, purple and white. Okay, I think so. I think that orange will appeal regardless whether the person is male or female. I think or whatever they identify as, I think that orange is not exactly attached to a particular gender per se. Okay, Larry says yes, because orange represents success and most young people want to be successful. I like that thought. Fode says orange is unisex. Nice, nice. Okay, so Akim, you've got some colors, some winning colors here, orange popping up again and again. All right, so you have something to play around with. Okay, let's look at the next slide. Okay, so this is one resource I think you would find very helpful. So I thought to put that in this presentation. If you, after this session, take some time to go to coolors.co. Now, coolors.co would help you to identify your color codes. So Akim, let's say, for example, you're starting with orange because orange, typifies confidence, bravery. Young people like to be successful. Orange typifies success. You can go on coolors.co, and this isn't just for Akim, this is for everybody. You can go on coolors.co and find other colors that match with orange. Okay, and then it would also help you to find the color codes for your colors. For businesses that I've supported in the past, I just go to coolors.co. Once I find the colors, you can lock down those colors, lock down the color codes, and then anytime you want to design a product for your business, you can always go back. So all you need to do is the color codes for the colors you have identified, share it with your graphics designer, and they'll be able to find the exact shade of your color. Okay, so sometimes if you say, oh, my color is red, then the graphic designer is struggling to find, okay, what's red? Your red can be light, can be dark, can be, if you say my color is yellow, what do you mean? Or if you say it's green, what is it? Light green, dark green, lemon green? What kind of green? Okay, so, but with coolors.co and with the hex codes that Coolors would generate for you, you are able to get the exact shade, all coded. All you need to do is give your graphics designer the code, or I would also share a resource to canva.com. Fantastic platform to do simple projects by yourself. You don't even need to get a paid platform. You can use the free version, and you can design simple things for yourself, even if you don't have the finances to engage a professional graphics designer. You can create stuff for yourself that is as professional. I mean, that would really look as professional as you can make it to look. All right, so just take note of those. In the resources, they will all be there for you to access as well. Okay, next slide, please. All right, so let's talk about your logo. Again, we're still looking at Karonga Computer Literacy Center. We say that the name is Karonga Literacy Center. The color, the main color is orange, and then Akim, later you'll go to colors and find additional colors to blend into your colors to match them. But you also don't want to have too many colors so you don't have a color riot, but then you can have, an additional 1 minute or so to match that. All right, so because of time, let's run through. So you talk about your logo, and let's just dissect. Next slide, please. All right, so your logo is an important part of your business, and you want to make sure that your logo explains what your business is about. On Canva, I talked about canva.com. On Canva, you can create your own logo. Okay. But you need to have these thoughts in your mind, things around what your mission stands for, what your colors are, what you're trying to typify, etc. Look at Dangote, for example. Now, Dangote, use on the screen, you can see Dangote is on you have the eagle, you have the half moon on top. He's using a particular shade of blue, not just any blue. Remember, we talked about blue. What did we say blue stands for? If you remember the slide that talked about color psychology, okay? If you use the charts, blue stands for trust. You know, one of the things one of the emotions you get when you see blue is trust, okay? So there's that sense of trust. In some places, some would say, you know, like it's not just any blue, it's actually dark blue, which can be like royal blue, like some people call it. And for Dangote, they were deliberate about the shade of blue. It typifies credibility. It typifies royalty. Okay, it typifies trust. And they want you to know that as a company, you can trust us. Okay, you can rely on us to deliver services, food items for your family, or whatever the particular service it is that you're engaging with Dangote on. Okay, they also have the half moon, you know, like the horizon, which sort of adds like brightness to the eagle on it. Okay, and the red stands for like a rebirth. Something exciting is coming, you know. So you can imagine the sun rising. Okay, something exciting is coming, and then you have the eagle on top of it. These are all thoughts. You know, there was some thought process into creating that logo. It wasn't just a random logo. Okay, there was some thought process to what the organization stands for, the vision they're trying to achieve, and then picking colors, picking images, you know, even the animal they used is all part of that thought process. An eagle, typically, you know, the strength with an eagle and things like that. Okay, let's look at the next slide. Let's look at UNICEF. Okay, yesterday, was it yesterday? No, the last session, we, you know, somebody was talking about UNICEF. You know, when he sees UNICEF, he thinks of children. Okay, so when you see the UNICEF logo, you're not confused about what they do. Okay, you're not confused about what they stand for. First of all, you can already see the image of a mother and a child in a globe. All right, so it gives this impression of, okay, they are supporting women and children across the world. All right, and they use the color blue, again, the color that represents trust, that represents stability. There's some sense of confidence you can have in UNICEF, knowing that wherever it is in the world, we will be there to support you. We'll be there to support women and children, and this is what we stand for. Okay, so these are things that I want you to start to think about. Akim, even when you're thinking about Karonga Computer Literacy Center, these are the kind of thoughts that you put in mind while you're deciding what your logo will look like. All right, let's go to the next slide. So let's look at our fonts. Next slide, please. Now, there are different types of fonts. There are different types of font classifications. And I know sometimes, you know, we can just go on, we're trying to create a document and say, oh, I like this font. Oh, this one looks nice. Use this one. But you want to be careful to make sure that the font you pick is reflective of what you are trying to tell your audience. It's reflective of the type of audience that you're speaking to. So, for example, there on the slide you can see that there are about 6 different categories. You have serif. Now, serif, and there are several fonts in that in the category of serif. Serif conveys tradition. It conveys formality. Okay, so and ideally for organizations that are, you know, academic. Okay, and so, yeah, for organizations that are academic, that are like in editorial, financial fields, typically use fonts in the serif category. And the font typically looks like what you have there. So it's classic. Okay, so for those, you know, old-time organizations, could be a bank, it could be you know, an organization that's trying to create the sense of you know, we've been here for a long time. There's some sense of stability with us. Like I said, an academic organization might choose to use classic. I choose to use serif rather. Sans serif, you could have things like Arial. So the font Arial, for many people who know Arial, is under the sans serif font classification. And typically it's easy to read. You use it a lot for like startup companies, for tech companies. It's modern, it's simple, it's not complicated. Okay, so others that are in like the slab serif, usually they're bold and impactful. They're frequently used by companies in like car and technology space. Okay, for scripts, you have, it's pretty much elegant. You use them, you have people like photographers using that, or coaches, or just trying to create that sense of elegance in the business and what we stand for. Okay, they could use scripts. For the decorative, sometimes people use that for like scary stuff. It could be dramatic, but trying to create, maybe the organization, for example, is maybe marketing Halloween or something scary, they could use stuff like that. Or it's a cinema business and there's a movie coming up and they try to use those kind of dramatic text there. And then you have the handwritten. Sometimes it just creates this informal sense to that. Again, for Akim, you can start to think of the potential fonts category that you would use for your business. But I think that somewhere along sans serif should be where you should be considering. We'll be wrapping up shortly. Again, if you have questions, put them in the chat and we'll look at that. Let's look at the next slide, please. Okay, Akim says I'll go with sans serif. Okay, yes, because a lot of tech companies and modern young people related organizations use that. Yeah, next slide, please. We'll talk about your tagline. Okay, tagline, you want to keep it simple, right? You don't want it too complicated, but you choose a tagline that people will remember. You think of Coca-Cola, you think open happiness. You think of Nike, okay, the popular brand that makes shoes and sports equipment. They just tell you, just do it, right? And then you think, okay, even at those moments where you're exhausted, I'm not sure I want to exercise, you think of, let's just, let me do this. I think I want to do this. Apple, think different, okay? UNICEF, for every child. Remember we talked about how the image they use, the colors they've chosen to use, and look at their tagline. Okay, so you want to make sure that your tagline is simple, your tagline is meaningful. Okay, it's not just any word because it's a nice word and you think it's nice. You want to make sure that whatever you're choosing resonates with your audience. Okay, you want to make sure it's clear, focus on the benefits that people get from your business, and you can tell a story. UNICEF, for every child. In 3 words, it already tells a simple story about this is who we stand for. These are the people that we support. Okay, let's look at the next slide. Okay, your image is very important there. I have a small video I want to show. I know I have just a few minutes, but if we can play that video for everybody here, it's just about 2 minutes. Yeah, I think that would be helpful. But it sort of tells you about your brand imagery and how that is important for what you're creating in your brand guide.
Everything that makes up your brand's visual aesthetic. Icons, photos, and illustrations all play a role. And just like fonts and colors, they help your brand to tell a story and deliver on its promise.
I guess the most interesting thing about illustration is it doesn't need to be based on reality. So you can have this weird idea that you would never be able to do in photography because it would involve flying to the moon and having a setup there, or you can illustrate that. And that means for tech products, new products, startups, a lot of the time they're going, what do I need in my imagery? I need to communicate an idea, but yet the product isn't finished yet, or we don't have an audience participating with it yet. So you can use illustration as a really good foundation to communicate the ideas behind your product or service.
Whether your brand is illustration-led or photography-led, there's no denying it. Imagery matters now more than ever. After all, every brand needs an Instagram page, right? Whether you're posting to social or laying out a magazine, brand imagery can really set the mood for your brand. Vibrancy, contrast, and composition are all ways you can make your images more ownable. Applying a filter can give them a unique look and feel. Just remember, consistency is key. Do all of your images follow the same aesthetic? And do they work in sync with all the other elements of your brand? The meditation app Headspace is tied together beautifully with whimsical illustrations. Their purpose is to improve the health and happiness of the world. From their fonts to illustrations to colour palette, every brand element oozes happiness. So if you want to build a brand that's memorable, make sure your imagery style is on point.
Thank you very much for that. I hope that you found that helpful. Oops. Okay, you stopped it now. Thank you. So yeah, other things that you want to consider as well is the language and how you speak to your audience. There's some resource in the slides that would made available for you as part of the resources that you'll be reflecting on over after this presentation, okay? And yeah, I'm going to stop at this point. Do we have questions? I imagine that there might be some questions, some thoughts, Bonnie, but yes, just let me know and I'm happy to answer them.
All right, thank you very much, Madam Wemimo, for this insightful session that you have taken us through in the Creating Your Branding Guide. And I would like to ask one question that is coming in my private inbox here. Someone is asking, what could be an implication that an organization or a company may have? For example, you used often Coca-Cola Red. Then eventually, Coca-Cola turns to start using blue. Won't it confuse clients and thinking this could be Crown Bottling Company product again, like Pepsi? Change of color in the wind so much that people are used to a particular color.
So I think we kind of touched on that the last time. So it's fine to change branding, but there's a process to that. So I imagine if, for example, Coca-Cola wants to change their branding and they say they no longer want red and they want to change it to blue, like you said, Bonnie, or they want to change it to another color. Typically, they would be working with their marketing team, take quite a couple of probably months to redesign what this might look like, start bringing it into the market gradually, and help people to know that we are still Coca-Cola, we're just rebranding. It's not, so that people don't see blue tomorrow and say, oh, maybe this is fake Coke. It's not the original Coke, and they're looking for the red one. So it's possible to rebrand, it's possible to change the look, change the feel, but that takes some time. And you need to gradually introduce that to your audience, to your target audience, so that they know that you are still the same you. You want to make, so for example, you still keep your tagline, so they know it's still you, although the color is changing, but you're still the same organization, right? And if you, I don't know if that answered your question, the question, Bonnie.
Yeah, and then another question is, companies have fought so much to build a brand, but individuals in the company often affects the brand by the action and what they do sometimes does not portray the image of the company. What should one do to minimize these anomalies that comes from the human resource affecting already a selling brand?
It's important to standardize your processes, and maybe that's where the brand guide comes in, right? So you want to make sure that you say, this is what we stand for, this is who we are. For every person who joins your team, you want to take them through some kind of training or, have a conversation with them, let them, you want to cast the vision to them and let them understand what the vision is. That's why, for example, you join a new organization to start working, you have a period of orientation. They spend some time to explain to you what the organization stands for. This is who we are. This is what we do. This is what we don't do. This is what we say. This is what we don't say. Things like that. Even though your organization, for everybody in this room, it may be small, it may still seem like small organizations, but you're going somewhere, start setting processes in place. So you have a brand guide, you have orientation sessions for your team members, you cast that vision to them and let them understand the idea in your mind, and so they can run with the same thing.
All right, thank you very much, Onikan, for the wonderful session that you have taken us through. I know there's a lot of excitement coming in from the audience, and I can feel it. very many people have already started to think about different colors to be used. I've seen I've seen Akim super excited of the color. I see Victoria saying, oh, wow, my color is gonna be red and pink. And yes, it's kind of amazing. I would like to give you 30 seconds to wrap up and give us a send-off message.
Okay, just to say thank you very much. I am so excited. I'm happy that you found this helpful. You can reach me on LinkedIn at Wemimo Onikan, just the same name. And if you have questions, I'm happy to provide responses. I would also share resources afterwards so that you can take this forward.